Hi, I'm Doug from Dynamic Computing, and welcome to episode 101 of 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast. Wait a second, the last episode was episode 99. What happened to episode 100? Well, that's a special episode. It's going to be a head-to-head episode of my Amiga 4000 and my Vampire and a Pi 400 running AmiBerry head-to-head. And I've been putting a lot of work and thought into it, and it's just not ready yet. But I want that to be my episode 100 video, so we're jumping to 101. So this week, we're going to do an episode about my Amiga 4000. Now, we're going to upgrade it to Amiga OS 3.2, but this is kind of a unique machine. For the past probably 16 years or so, 17 years, it was an Amiga OS 3.9 machine. I bought that back in the early 2000s. And then in 2019, when the new Amiga OS 3.14 came out, I used a script that was available on AmiNet that allowed you to upgrade your 3.9 install up to 3.14 and keep things like the reaction interface intact. Now, reaction was one of the big things with Amiga OS 3.9 that enhances things like your gadgets and your tools and your intuition boxes and gives them a greater, neater, more fun look. And I liked it. So I upgraded from 3.9 to 3.14. There's a video on that right there if you want to go back in time. This is going to be a fairly unique video too, because I generally have my videos scripted and tested before I shoot them, because, you know, I need to keep them all 10 minutes or under, so I have to make sure everything flows nicely. But this time we're going to be doing the actual upgrade live, so if the Amiga 4000 starts on fire as soon as I start the upgrade, you guys are going to see it. Just a bit of brief information about my lovely Amiga 4000 in case you're not familiar with it. This has a Warp Engine accelerator card in it. See, there's a brightly colored little fan right there. Normally the Warp Engine is an 040 card, but I have one of the 040 to 060 upgrade chips on there. It's a little platform where you can put an 060 chip on there and it will work in about 90% of 040 boards. Absolutely wonderful. Works at 66 megahertz. I've got the SCSI to SD from our friends at Inertial Computing. This is the version 6, so it's nice and fast with the fast SCSI available to the Warp Engine. This has 128 megabytes of 32-bit fast memory on the card and another 16 megabytes of 32-bit sort of fast Amiga memory. We've got a CyberGrafx 64 retargetable graphics card, and underneath that you'll see there's an Xsurf 100 networking card with a Rapid Road USB interface right on it. That works just delightfully. And then you can't really see it in there because it's tucked away, but I also have the AD516 16-bit audio card in here for 16-bit audio, and that's just a little marvel. And lastly, there's a VLab video capture card. It captures live video, it just stills, not the actual video, but it's an absolutely beautiful little card. I did a show on that a couple of years ago right up there. Now, first things first, before I do this upgrade, I do have a backup of my SD card. I took it over to my PC and I used WinUAE to make an HDF copy of my card. So if I really bugger things up, in theory, I can just restore it from that backup. We'll see. Now, I want to do an in-place upgrade, and the easiest and fastest way to do that is either with an actual CD-ROM drive, which I do own from my Amiga 4000. It's just not plugged in, or take the actual ISO file, mount it in Amiga OS, easy to do, and I'll show you how, and run the actual installation from the ISO file, and that is incredibly fast. Now, there are lots of ways to get this 77 megabyte ISO file over to your Amiga. Pop out your SD or your CF card, throw it in a WinUAE capable machine, mount it, copy the file over, boom, you're done. Amiga 600 or Amiga 1200, use a CF card in the PCMCIA slot, copy it over, boom, you're done. No problem at all. PARNet, Amiga Forever has its nice little Amiga Explorer for copying things over the network or over a parallel cable. And then, of course, FTP, like I did in my video right here, where I set up an FTP server on my PC, and then I have all my Amigas connect to it to transfer data. Works like a charm. But today, just for fun, we did things a little bit differently. We're going to be copying over the ISO file via Dropbox. I've got all my Amiga stuff on my Dropbox account, and believe it or not, your Amiga can use Dropbox, no problem at all. There's a cool utility available on AmiNet. You'll see the link right there, created by Norbert Kett. And please, if you use his software, purchase a license for it. It's worth it. But it allows you to use Dropbox as an actual device on your Amiga. It's really cool. So let's start out here by opening up the shell. And we'll expand this out a little bit. Now, to mount Dropbox on here, let's see, we just tell it to connect, run dbox, and what that does is that initiates the connection to your actual Dropbox, as long as you've got the software installed. In a second, it'll come back and say dbox. There we go. Now, when I go to dbox, look at this, do a directory. That is my actual Dropbox on the internet right now. All of these files are right up there in Dropbox. And look what happens here on the desktop, a Dropbox icon. Double click that. Now obviously these are not icon files, you'd have to show them by name, but it tells me I have 1.6 terabytes free on my Dropbox, 424 gigabytes used. That is pretty cool. And you can go through all the directories just like you could normally. So let's look in the Amiga directory here. CD Amiga. Look at that. Isn't that cool? And all of your standard commands work just fine. And what we want is the Amiga OS 32 folder. And in here, you see, I have my 78 megabyte ISO file. Literally use just the standard copy command. So we do copy .iso to work : Amiga OS 32. And I've already got that folder created, and as soon as I hit enter, it's going to start copying it over. Takes a couple minutes because Amigas aren't the fastest at networking. Now that we've got it copied over, let's go into the Amiga OS 32 directory on the Amiga. There's our ISO file, 78 megabytes. Nice. So that's ready to go. Now, on the Amiga, you've got your startup sequence and your user startup. Both of those are very important files. They are telling your Amiga what is where, what folders are where, what files to launch at startup. When you do an upgrade, you're going to automatically back up your startup sequence and your user startup. So if we have anything special, in theory, it won't get rid of it. Like here, I've got stack attack. I think that I have that commented out. I've got a bunch of assigns. In case the upgrade loses any of this, I want to back this up manually anyways. Especially in my user startup, I literally have like 16 years of things inside this user startup I really don't want to lose. I really don't want to have to reinstall the software. So I'm just going to back this up just to be on the safe side. And of course, since we're already in the shell, we can do it right from here, where your startup sequence and user startup are in your S folder on your Workbench disk. And so we'll just copy startup sequence, startup sequence .a32 for the 3.2 upgrade. Just make a copy of that. Same thing with user startup. User startup .a32. So now we've got physical copies of both of those files, just in case I need to reference them to recreate anything. Now, of course, my Amiga 4000 has the Amiga 314 ROMs in it right now. And I do own the Kickstart Amiga 4000 3.2 ROMs. These I purchased from my good friend Frank at retrorewind.ca. Shameless plug. I recommend if you want to buy Amiga OS 3.2 or some of the ROMs, just give Frank a shot over at retrorewind.ca. He's right here in North America, in Canada, right to the north. Great guy, great service. Now, one would suspect that we would want to put the Amiga 3.2 ROMs in the Amiga 4000 before we do the upgrade. Nay, I made that mistake before and it didn't work. What happens is the workbench.library and the icon.library are a little different with 3.2. So if you've got 3.2 ROMs in there and you try to boot 314, it just gives you error messages and can't boot. You know, of course, there are workarounds, ways you can get around it, but they just should have made it so you could put 3.2 ROMs in there and it would still work fine with 314. That just would have solved all the problems. So instead, when I do an upgrade, I do it with the old ROMs. I upgrade the system to 3.2 because it works fine with either 3.1 or 3.14 ROMs. Then when I'm done, I pop the old ROMs out, put the new ROMs in, we're happy. So we have our startup files backed up. We have our operating system backed up. We have our Amiga 3.2 ISO file already moved over here. So we are ready to fly. So what do we use to mount this ISO file? Well, I like to use Imagemount. Now, Imagemount comes, you can get it off of AmiNet. I'll have a link in the description, but it also comes right along with our friend Gulliver's best workbench update for 3.14. I use this all the time. You can mount ADF, ISO, or even HDF files. Really, really useful. Now, this does work in Amiga OS 3.2, but every time I launch it and connect something, I get a strange warning message. It does not seem to affect how it works, even in the slightest bit. Everything works great, but there's a warning message that comes up. So hopefully there'll be a fix or a patch for that soon. Click on ISO. I'm going to tell it where my ISO file is. Work, Amiga OS 32, Amiga OS ISO. Now, in theory, look at this. Look at this. There's a virtual CD. We go in here to install. We go in here to virtual floppies. And we can mount these just by clicking them. And they auto mount themselves after that. So here we get mount install 3.2. Oops, wrong one. There it is. See, it shows up right here on the desktop, right on Andy Warhol's face. Sorry, Andy, you're blocked with a CLI here. There, Deborah, now you look better. What we can do, we just click install and choose your language. And let's see what happens. Now watch how fast this is. This automatically will switch the disks and automatically do the install for us. We're going to choose intermediate, install for real. It detects Workbench, great. English, we'll install all the printers. We're in America, so we don't want any of these foreigners over here. Proceed. Glow icons, yes. This is where it's going to be automatically backing things up. Notice it's not backing up user startup, which is interesting. I'm glad we did that manually. And now it's going to crank away. Many files are no longer needed under 3.2. These may be deleted. Yep, we'll delete them. Now watch how quickly this install goes when you're doing it from an ISO file. blazing fast, and it's switching the disks automatically. If you look on the left hand side, you can see Disk Doctor, Locale, Workbench 3.2. It just crank right through them. And this is not sped up at all. Look at her go! Da-na-na-na-na-na, da-da-da-da-da. Classes 3.2. All of our new data types going on in there. Beautiful. New fonts going in there. Okay, old fonts that we've been using for 100 years. Storage is next. Look at how fast that is. This is taking minutes to install. I just hope it actually boots after this. That would be really great. Glow icons. Imagine trying to do this from floppy. We'd be here all afternoon. Please identify your hardware. A4000 desktop. Yep, that's us. This is where it's going to be detecting that we're using an Amiga OS 3.1.4 ROM and automatically patching that to work with 3.2. That's fantastic. Remove all floppies, hit proceed. Let's see what happens. Okay, first thing we see is our MUI error about Poseidon, which is the USB stack. We need to adjust the stack size. That's fine, doesn't really matter. That's not an error. But look at this. Look at this. We go to About, Release 3.2. Now it's detecting the proper Kickstart version because it's using 3.1.4 ROMs and patching them to the 3.2 ROMs. That is sweet. And look at this. It keeps reaction, obviously is working perfectly because my special reaction based Workbench dock down here is working perfectly. Let's see if all my favorite programs still work. This is going to be heavily reliant on the user startup folder. Look at that. Absolutely perfect. Everything so far working fine. Let's open up, see if there's any errors here. Lovely. Absolutely lovely. Let's try a few more things here. Yeah, there we go. ProWrite. And this did happen to launch using standard modes, the standard RGB modes here, which is why I had to switch it over. But this normally would have launched in retargetable graphics mode because I use one of the mode promotion utilities. Now I noticed that that did not function, so I will have to take a look at the mode promotion utilities, make sure they're working. Go back here, let's take a look. Now let's make sure that all of our little key presses work. Remember Amiga Y, right? Amiga Y will resort everything for you. Look at that, it resorts it just perfect. Let's go into prefs. Look, ugly. Right Amiga Y. Yep, that's working beautifully. Now let's take a look at some of the utilities that come with it. Make sure they all moved over just fine. Reaction, of course, working fine. Our workbench preferences, quality, nope, we want best. No borders, no volume. Let's increase our stack size to 32K. We have the memory. And then of course, our ability to move the screens off the screen. We need to go into I control prefs and resize from all sides. We need to go on there. I've got no scroll wheel. Save. And we'll make sure that works. Yep, look at that. Goes right off the screen just like it's supposed to. So unbelievably useful. let's take a look in my Workbench startup drawer. Clean this up. And yep, I don't see my mode promotion utility in here. So let's turn that on. We're going to go into Prefs. And we're going to go into Workbench Startup Prefs. And find my mode promotion utility. Mode Pro. Now let's see if some of the other cool stuff still functions. Let's see here. We'll go to Applications, Video. Let's take a look at Riva. See what we have with Riva here. And look at that, we've got our first crash. Okay, so there's some things that I have to tweak here. Riva doesn't seem to be happy playing back MPEG files, so that's something that we'll have to look at and see what's going on. Let's take a look at a few more things now that we've rebooted. We want to go into Hard Disk Toolbox and make sure it's upgraded the version of Fast File System properly. So we're going to go in here to Advanced. We're going to click on Add Update. 46.2 is the file system that it claims to have, and I bet that's the latest one, but we will, no, 47.4 is the latest one. So it did not automatically upgrade the fast file system to the latest version. Now I've done that. Now in theory, you should only have to do it for one of the partitions. See, now it's 47.4 in the second partition, so that's fine. And we're going to save the changes. No problem at all. Now we have the latest version of the fast file system, so make sure you do that manually. Now the last thing we really want to do is get those Kickstart 3.2 ROMs in here, physically in the machine. That's going to save us a reboot at the beginning of the machine starting up. So let's go ahead and get the Amiga 4000 taken apart, and we'll get those ROMs stuck in there and make sure they work. Now inside the lovely Amiga 3000, once we take our Warp Engine card out, you'll see we have our two 314 ROMs right in there. Oh look, recapped by Paul Resendez, Asil. Definitely check him out if you're in the United States and you need recapping done. So I'm going to go ahead and pop these two little beauties out and pop in my 3.2, put my Warp Engine back in, and see if she boots. And lo and behold, the ROMs worked. Now be aware that some people mark their ROMs with U175 and U176 on the Amiga 4000, high and a low ROM. U175 is the high ROM. U176 is the low ROM, kind of exactly opposite of the way numerically you'd think it would fall. But just make sure you plug them in the right way. Now there's differing theories on whether or not plugging them in the wrong high and low would damage it. I personally don't think it could. It's just not going to read them. But try and get it right. So it seems to work absolutely perfectly with the new Amiga ROMs installed. I've got a couple little tweaks I need to do, like on Riva. It crashed when I was trying to launch Riva, but we'll see. Maybe there's a new version of Riva out there that works better on this. I'm going to do some more thorough testing, make sure all my programs work, but I would say the test to see if the 3.9 to 3.14 to 3.2 Amiga OS update works, it seems to. Thanks. Huge thanks to my patrons. I really appreciate it. You see the beautiful list of these beautiful people scrolling by right now. Without their help, I would be much more afraid to do something like this to my Amiga 4000 and concerns it was going to blow the whole thing up. So thank you all for your support. If you'd like to join in, pop on over to patreon.com/10mark, and for as little as $2 a month, you can help support the show. Please like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. It really does help. Follow me on Twitter at 10mark1 and also on my Instagram and my Facebook accounts. That's great. please comment below about your experiences with Amiga OS 3.2, whether it's a fresh install or a crazy upgrade like mine. Let me know what you think, and let me know what problems you've discovered. We'd love to help figure out what's going on. But until next time, this is Doug from 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast signing out to go finish episode 100.